Hello, everyone. Kaydub here. And in this episode of Buddhism Reactions and Reflections, we're going to talk about something really personal. And this is a great first episode idea. And I'm glad that I'm going to follow through with it. And that is the experience of when my father passed away. So I'll give you some of the context, I'll give you some of the reaction, some of the response, and how Buddhism played into that, the teachings and how they were applied in that situation. So let's start out with the context. So every Sunday, I would call my dad. And, we would talk about what had happened during the week. We were not an everyday communication thing. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. We both said, look, we can't talk every day because then we'll have nothing to talk about. So we made the arrangement to talk once a week. Now, sometimes I would call and have to leave a message saying, hey, can you get back to me when you're available? Because sometimes, he would lose track of time, be outside or something, or be in the bathroom. And you're not, even if you have a cordless phone, I wouldn't recommend answering in the bathroom. So sometimes that would happen and he'd call back within 10, 15 minutes or something like that. So, and the agreed upon time was 12 noon. So it gets to 12:50, and I had called again around 12:30, and it gets to 12:50, and I'm like, yeah, this is probably not a great situation because this is uncommon. Now, thankfully, my best friend lives in the same town that my father lived in. Sorry to mix up the tenses, but that's sort of how it is right now. And so I sent him a message on Facebook Messenger and basically just said, hey, I've tried calling my dad several times. He has not called back. This is very unusual. Could you just go up to his place and check on him? And I didn't hear back for a couple of hours, which was a pretty good indicator that it wasn't awesome news. It was either had to go to the hospital or passed away. And so when I did get the call back, it was to inform me that yes, my father had passed away. And there's this image that comes into my mind. You prepare for a race. Say you're a runner and you prepare for the race. And there's still that time where it's ready, set, go, or ready, set, pop, whatever the situation may be. But even though you're well prepared, you've trained up for it, you get off to a bad start. You get off to a very poor start. Or maybe you hear the pop, but you don't go anywhere at first. That's sort of what it felt like with me, because that was the shock kick. So I was very well prepared for hearing, "Well, your dad passed away. Sorry," because that's all my best friend could say at that point, and that's all they needed to say. And so I got off to a poor start. I sort of got a slow start on that because even though I was prepared, I wasn't necessarily ready. They sort of interconnect with each other, but being ready is different than being prepared. Being ready means when the moment comes. Being prepared means just having that preparation for that moment and having, in this case, the background knowledge and being able to cope with emotions. And so I got off to a little poor start. Now, that being said, to my credit, the first thing I said was, thank you for letting me know I need to call some people. And so I was focused already on a particular goal. I needed to tell people. So I needed to tell my sister. I needed to tell the principal that I worked for. And this was in 2020, so this was during the pandemic. 4 years ago yesterday, this recording is on 5/4, and the the date of death was 5/3/2020. And so I had that process going. I'm trying to get through that process without being super duper emotional because I have to be able to relay the information. And so I'm able to talk to my sister who has the reaction that you would expect, being there, crying and all that, and it's like let her do her process, okay? And then I talk to my principal. I say I don't know when I'll be back. They said, hey, just do what you need to do. We'll worry about time off and all that later. And my second family is like, we can come get you, and you can stay with us. So everything there worked out well. And so I'm still in a hyper emotional, stressful situation here. I'm drinking Pepsi like it's water and it's healthy for me, which it isn't and never will be. Uh, because I'm trying to process the information. And at some point, I stopped because that's sort of something that I needed to do at that time, which was I needed to stop and I needed to tell myself, we need to chill out. So we need to take these feelings, we need to address them, we need to label them, we need to put them to the side because we have a goal that we need to do. My father did not have a will. So taking care of the estate was going to be given priority. And so I put that to the side. I felt a ton better when I was able to put all those feelings to the side and focus on that. Getting that process sort of going, at least in my brain, because it takes a little while to get from where I lived, where my father lived. And so I get picked up. We get this process going. I'm stressed to the max because of the will not being present, not my dad being dead. I had already processed those emotions for the most part. The only thing we didn't know was cause of death at the beginning. And then some new emotions came up with that. But anyway, we get this process going. My dad was trusting me to take care of everything. He told me that right up front, years and years and years before. And so I start this process. I call my sister. I'm like, there's such crap ton of things we need to do here. I need some assistance. Can you help me out? And so she agrees, of course, because even though we don't talk a lot, we're on great terms for the most part. We'll have our disagreements, but we let the disagreements be disagreements, and it doesn't really necessarily negatively impact our relationship. So we're getting all this whole process going, and my former brother-in-law says it'd be really, really frustrating if the cause of death was something that was treatable, which it ended up being. It ended up being complications from chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, which the number one cause of that is smoking. And my dad was a smoker since his late teens. And, there's so much going on there. And because I didn't live right in town and I didn't visit a lot, I didn't pick up on a lot of those things. And so now we have some new emotions to process, the sort of frustration, anger. And when those hit, they hit really intense for me. I have a high tolerance for it, and then when that threshold is reached, I get really quiet. There are two ways that I react, not respond, react. I either get really quiet or I start talking and cursing a lot. And I sort of was more toward the talking and cursing part when it started, and then I mellowed out. I just sort of sat where my dad lived in a trailer by myself one day and just processed all of that and said, okay, this is not helpful at the moment. Let's put it to the side. And later on, I think it was maybe 1 week after getting the phone call, I said, well, my father made his choices. There's nothing I can do about that now. So this anger and this frustration, it's not going to be helpful going forward. So let's just keep it to the side. And, it doesn't mean that you didn't experience it. It just means that it's not as important anymore. And I feel like a lot of that is influenced by my Buddhist practice. And so when it came to that process, I really felt like the teachings of the Buddha really came in handy. Because every time I got into one of those emotional states, I was able to take a step back, whether it was very quickly or a little bit later, and say, okay, well, what are we going through? What's going on right now? What's this process that we're going through? Is it helpful? And also acknowledging that it's an impermanent state. Eventually, that's going to not be the case if I was able to let go of that. Or at least put it to the side. I think putting it to the side is a better explanation than letting it go. Letting it go implies that we're sort of tossing it away, when actually we're just sort of placing it to the side and then moving somewhere else. So, just like I have a cup for soda. It's very useful when I have soda or I get a drink of water, but when I don't need that anymore, I put it to the side. And that's sort of what I was doing with those strong feelings and emotions. I was taking them and I was saying, okay, I have these, but do I really need those right now? Are they being helpful? Are they, helping me be constructive? And if they weren't, I put them to the side. And to this day, when I think about my father and I think about his passing and everything, all of those are still to the side. I'm not angry about it. I'm not frustrated about it. I instead have focused on everything that I was taught, all the experiences that we had together that enriched my life. And I feel like, from my perspective, for me personally, that's what I need to focus on. And that's what I should process. Now, does it mean that I I push everything to the side and I never look at it again? No. It means that I'm only looking back for the lessons and then I'm leaving it there. So I feel like a lot of that is influenced by Buddhist practice, where we are regularly, I wouldn't say required, but it's always suggested that we look at the transitoriness of not only things, but also of people, and also of our feelings and emotions, which can get really strong. And being able to take those and say, that's not useful, we're going to put that to the side. We're going to let that simmer right there. So when it comes to death, everyone's going to react a little bit differently, or respond a little bit differently if they're able to take the time. And that's sort of what my experience is. Now, if you have any questions, comments about this, please let me know, and I will answer as forthcoming as I feel comfortable doing, which it probably shouldn't be too much of a hassle. So thank you for tuning in, and I hope this was insightful, and I look forward to the next one. So until the next recording, everyone, take care of yourselves. I'll talk to you soon. It's out for now.